Hey everyone, it's Andrew from PokePhenomenal, and I'm here to offer you another challenge run of Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. Last time, we completed a hardcore Nuzlocke of Leaf Green, which turned out to be a pretty great time all around. But this time, Mike and I wanted to make things a little more normal. And so today, I'm here to show you our hardcore normal type Monolocke of Pokemon Fire Red. Before we start, I want to quickly explain the concept behind a Monolocke just for those who are unfamiliar. Essentially, we'll be playing through a standard hardcore Nuzlocke of the game, but with the caveat that we're only allowed to do so using normal type Pokemon. Normal hardcore Nuzlocke rules apply, and on top of that, we've tweaked and added a few to make the Monolocke more fun and easier to pull off. A complete list of our rules will be added to the description, but most important to the Monolocke are the following. The run begins when we catch or obtain our first Pokemon that is either already of the type we're monolocking, or which will become that type upon evolution. If a Pokemon that meets these conditions can be obtained normally before the first gym, we can play the game normally, releasing any other Pokemon on the team upon catching the first member of the Monolocke proper. Otherwise, we'll hack an appropriate Pokemon in, and begin the run with that Pokemon from the start. In any given area or route, we must catch the first Pokemon that meets the conditions of the Monolocke, regardless of whether there is more than one viable encounter in the area. However, if a Pokemon that can be encountered is already present on the team, that is, it hasn't fainted, we can choose to skip it and go for another encounter. In the case of trade Pokemon, the required Pokemon for the trade can be caught regardless of its type or the status of the area it's found in. A trade Pokemon is considered the encounter of the area in which the trade takes place. Additionally, we may make allowances to encounter rules on a case-by-case basis if we think it will make the run more interesting or enjoyable. Beyond that, there's not much for me to say. So how about we get started and see how Mike and I can do pitting a bunch of normal dudes against the elements. We start off the Nuzlocke by creating our character, Paul, and naming his rival Luke, setting off an adventure that, despite its common appearance, is almost biblical in nature. Based on our trainer ID, we decide to take Squirtle as our starter, which also serves the purpose of randomizing our rival's team and preventing us from gaming the system. In our first and only non-normal battle, we take out Luke's Bulbasaur before moving on to Viridian City, collecting Oak's parcel, and retrieving our first Pokeballs. With these early game chores out of the way, we're now ready to get our first encounter and start the Monolocke for real. On Route 1, we encounter Marcus the Rattata, who becomes our new starter. Although we hate to see him go, we quickly release our Squirtle into the vast wilderness, which leaves just us and our normal types against the world. Next, we pick up Rebecca the Spearow on Route 22, avoid the optional encounter with Luke, and also catch Robert the Pidgey on Route 2. This is our last encounter before Brock, which means we have no other choice but to face him with just 2 pet birds and a mouse. The way through Viridian City feels shorter than ever as we move forward to challenge the first, and one of the most terrifying, challenges of the run. So the fight against Brock is going to be one of the more annoying fights within this Nuzlocke, and you'll see why in just a second. We start off with Robert the Pidgey because we pretty much have to, using Sand Attack as much as possible to lower the Geodude's accuracy, so that way he can't just run over our entire team. So we set up as many Sand Attacks as possible here, get his accuracy lowered, and while we do that, Geodude hits us with either Tackle or Defense Curl. Luckily, we don't get hit too much, and after setting up those accuracy drops, I start to go for some Gusts on the Geodude, just to see how much it's going to do. Obviously, it's not doing very much, so I know I have to switch over to Rebecca, because Rebecca has Leer, which is going to allow us to lower Geodude's defense and make it possible to actually put on some damage, despite the fact that we're only using normal and flying types. So I start setting up the Leers. It's annoying to get hit by a crit there, and I actually decide to go for a Fury attack just to see if I can get lucky. Obviously that was a no-go, so we return to using the Leers. And we just have to hope that, once the Geodude gets his defense curls up, he tries to go for Tackle. Luckily he does that. I go for another Fury attack, I get lucky, and I actually hit 5 times. But as you can see, that doesn't do that much damage. I go for another Leer, just to get Geodude's defense as low as possible, because really that's the only option that we have, given our current circumstances. And you can see we kind of get into an annoying loop here where I use Leer, he uses Defense Curl. It's not the most fun thing to do, but it's kind of a necessary aspect of the Nuzlocke. Eventually we have to switch over to Marcus to save our Spearow. We use Hyper Fang, we get the flinch, we use it again. Luckily Hyper Fang is really powerful for this stage in the Nuzlocke, so it's able to do a lot of damage for us. And with that accuracy drop, Geodude's not able to really hit us too much, and we're just able to steadily whittle away at the Geodude's health with Marcus. So obviously he sets up these defense curls, it makes it a little bit more annoying, but at this point, with how low our Spearow's health was, there's really no choice for us but to continue to just use Quick Attack, use Hyper Fang. I'm trying to conserve our PP here as much as possible, and I actually switch back to Robert here when I know that he only has 1 HP left, and go for Quick Attack because we want Robert in when the Onix comes in so that we can employ the same strategy. So we go right back to Sand Attack because we really just have to lower Onix's accuracy as much as possible, or else he's just going to destroy our whole team. So that's what we do here. We just have Robert set up all of these Sand Attacks. Unfortunately, Robert gets hit with a Rock Tomb, which means it's time for Rebecca to come out. We're really just going to hope that we don't get hit and get as many Leers off as possible, just to make it actually feasible that we take out the Sonics. We get lucky here, and I get 3 Leers. I start to consider going for a Fury Attack, and I decide to do it just to see how much it does. Unfortunately, it doesn't do very much, and we get hit with a Rock Tomb. But Marcus has a lot of HP now, and going for a Hyper Fang, it actually does a really good amount of damage. And since Onix doesn't have a way to increase his defense, we kind of sit pretty, take out the Onix, and with that, we're able to finish our battle against Brock and get the Boulder Badge. Huddling in fear and grateful to have been left with our lives, we hold a funeral for our fallen birds and soldier on. Luckily, Rattata is kind of a hard carry in the early portion of this game, so we have no problems dealing with the trainers before Mount Moon. Along the way to the first cave of the game, we also add Elizabeth the Jigglypuff to our team. Within Mount Moon itself, we collect a star piece and then encounter Susan the Clefairy, who will serve as a vitally important special attacker to the team. The rest of Mount Moon proves to be no issue. And outside, we get our ladies some karate training as a treat, teaching Elizabeth Mega Punch and Susan Mega Kick. Before Celadon City, we also catch our second Spearow, Charles, and after a few evolutions and some rotated movesets, we're ready to fight Misty. Misty is one of the most terrifying gym leaders in this entire game, so we have to be careful in this fight. We start with Marcus because he's really powerful and pretty fast, and we go for a Hyper Fang, taking the Staryu out in 1 hit. Misty sends out her real killer Starmie next. We keep the strategy the same and go for the Hyper Fang. Luckily, its Water Pulse doesn't get the confusion, which means we just have to make a choice here. I see that the damage is not so large, so I'm a little worried that we're not going to get the kill if we go for it again, but I don't have much of a choice. The Starmie actually gets us first with the Water Pulse, but we get really lucky with a crit and take the Starmie out to finish our fight with Misty. With Misty out of the way, we immediately drop the Water Pulse TM on Susan, which is a necessary step for dealing with the many rock and ground types that we're going to be encountering in the next leg of the journey. Marcus handles the next rival fight with ease, and we quickly make our way through the Nugget Bridge, past the trainers above Celadon, and then grab the SS Ann ticket from Bill. On our way to Vermilion, we catch Ashley the Meowth, and also shore up our Pidgey deficit with Phil, who we find on Route 6. Using a ticket that we conned from Bill for pressing a button on his computer, we waste no time in making our short but fruitful journey through the SS Ann, collecting a few necessary items, and sweeping Luke's team with Marcus and Charles. Then, with Cut now in our possession, stop being creepy, Captain, we see the ship off and are finally ready to fight Surge. Given that we don't have a Diglett to take us through this fight really easily, we start with Marcus again, who we've equipped with the Dig TM. So we dig down, avoid the Voltorb Shockwave, and we take Voltorb out with the single dig. Surge sends out his Pikachu next, and we go for dig again. We're luckily faster and avoid the Thunder Wave, and we get a crit here, which wasn't necessary, but it ensures that we take the Pikachu out as well. And then Surge sends out his really scary Pokemon Raichu. We are faster than it, so we avoid the first Thunder Wave and get a dig, but because it doesn't kill, we take the next Thunder Wave. But our Cherry Berry heals us up, we go for a Quick Attack, and we're able to take the Raichu out and finish the Surge fight without any real difficulty whatsoever. With Surge out of the way, there's really nothing for us to do aside from head for Rock Tunnel, where Susan and Water Pulse are finally going to start pulling their weight. Rock Tunnel itself is uneventful, if a little annoying, and we head toward the light on the other side, emerging in Lavender Town and crossing over Route 8 to Celadon City. Our first stop in Celadon is the department store, where we pick up a few essential TMs and other items before turning our eyes to encounters. There are quite a few good normal types to pick up in this area, but in the name of making a more unique run, we decide to purchase a Porygon from the game corner. Although we're able to cheat in 9,500 coins, Porygon costs 9,999, which means we'll have to do a little gambling in order to secure the rest of the funds. It takes some time, but eventually we're able to hit a jackpot. Which just goes to show, sometimes all it takes to succeed is having a massive amount of capital to begin with, so that you can just throw it at the wall until something sticks. With George added to our team, we pick up the Fly TM, which is the last thing we'll need before facing Erika. Erika isn't really a gym leader I'm very worried about, given the amount of flying types we have access to, so we start with Charles and go for Peck, just to avoid any accuracy issues. We do go for Fly next just to get that tiny bit of extra damage, avoiding a Stun Spore, and taking the Victory Bell out with that move. Erika sends out the Tangela next, and this time we just go for Fly, figuring that we're going to hit it and avoiding a Poison Powder from the Tangela. We actually get a critical hit, which is nice, but same as the Pikachu, kind of unnecessary. She sends out the Vileplume next, and we go for Fly, avoiding a Stun Spore. We hit that Fly and almost kill the Vileplume, but it's just barely not enough. So we get paralyzed and go for a Peck, predicting the Hyper Potion heal. The Peck does a good amount of damage, but we know we have to go for Fly next, even if it's a bit of a risk. So we fly up and hit the Fly and take the Vileplume out, which also helps us to beat Erika and get the Rainbow Badge. After some quick team maintenance, we run through the Rocket hideout with a decently strong team, and before long, it's time for us to challenge Rocket Boss Giovanni for the first time. One easy fight later. Giovanni runs away in tears, and grabbing the Silph Scope out of the puddle, we make our way to the Pokemon Tower. Susan has no difficulty taking out Luke's underleveled team, and given we're running a team of only normal types, the ghosts of Pokemon Tower pose no real threat as we make our way through. After disposing of the Rocket Grunts, we save Mr. Fuji and receive the Poke Flute, which we'll be putting to immediate use in waking up the Snorlax east of Vermilion City. It's at this point that I make a mistake, assuming that we have a lot more Pokeballs than we actually do. Unfortunately, it's only after we've started the encounter that I notice we only brought 10 Pokeballs and 2 Great Balls to a Snorlax fight, which might prove to be an issue. Although the team does make a valiant effort to stave off the Snorlax's relentless attacks and yawning, things go a little south.
Andrew?
I assumed we would have more Pokeballs, Mike.
So there's no easy solution. We kind of came into this unprepared.
Don't say that, Mike. Oh god. I'm gonna be honest, I kind of screwed the pooch on this one. I'll take the blame for this.
Yeah, I mean...
I assumed we had more Pokeballs. We had 2 Great Balls.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. 4 more attempts. No!
Damn it.
I'm just gonna go for another quick attack. Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
After all that. Oh god.
Oh boy. Well, at least we have a backup Snorlax.
Well, it's a good thing, yeah, we didn't get that Dodu.
It's unfortunate to lose out on the first Snorlax, but lucky for us, there's a second one west of Celadon. And after stocking up on some Great Balls, we make our second attempt, adding Jim the Snorlax to the team, who will be an invaluable asset for the rest of the run. Heading down the cycling road, we reach Fuchsia City, where the Safari Zone awaits. There are actually a lot of good encounters here, but what we're really hoping for is either a Kangaskhan or a Tauros, which, although difficult to catch, would add a lot of value to the pure normal team. But in our excitement to get our first Safari Zone encounter, Mike and I forget that we could have guaranteed a Doduo on the cycling road beforehand, and so we're forced to pick one up as our first encounter. After welcoming Samantha to the team, we grab some items and pick up the Surf and Strength HMs, 2 incredibly useful moves for a monotype normal run. Having finished with encounters for now, we prepare for Koga by shuffling some of our movesets around and giving ourselves some coverage for the fight. We decide to hold on to the Psychic TM for now, rather than risk losing it before the Elite Four, and instead we add George to the rotation, because he comes preloaded with a decently strong Psychic move. And with that, we're ready for Koga. I have developed some trauma when it comes to facing Koga, so I'm a little nervous as I send out the Porygon, who I've now realized is named William, to face him. We start with some agilities, mostly just to get our speed up for the Pokemon that will be coming out afterwards, But unfortunately, this makes it so that we get hit by a smokescreen and miss our first Psybeam, taking more damage than I would have liked to Sludge. Luckily, our first Psybeam is enough to take the coughing out, but we've already taken more damage than I would have liked. Our next Psybeam is a critical hit, which is really nice, but the Muck sets up a Minimize, which kind of scares me. So I decided to send in Jim, just hoping that he can tank as many hits as possible, but he immediately gets hit with a crit Sludge. Luckily, he's immune to Toxic, so we're able to do a Strength, hit it, and take the Muck out. Koga sends out the Coughing next. I keep Jim out because I figure he's going to be our best option. We go for Strengths, and we're able to take the Coughing out without any real difficulty. So Koga sends out his last Pokemon, Weezing, and I'm a little scared of what he can do to Jim. So I decide to take a look at our other Pokemon, and then go for Elizabeth instead. We send out Elizabeth, she gets hit by a Sludge, and we go for Sing, hoping that we can get that Weezing asleep, which we do. I go for Mega Punch, but I wasn't ready for Koga to use the full heal. So we hit that Mega Punch, but I immediately have to switch out to Charles to avoid losing Elizabeth. Charles gets hit with a big Sludge, but we're able to fly up and avoid the next one, and hit Weezing with Fly. But the next Sludge does a lot of damage, it poisons Charles, and we have no choice but to switch off of him. I go into Marcus figuring he's going to be able to do enough damage to take out the Weezing, and go for a Hyper Fang. We miss it, but I decide that the Hyper Fang is definitely going to kill, and it doesn't, and we lose Marcus, and I'm hit with the realization that I've seen this all before. It didn't kill! No!
Live!
Live! Blizzard! Oh, Delia! So, yeah, we lose another Raticate in pretty much the exact same way, because I'm an idiot. So we take a look at who we still have available. Things aren't looking so good, but we send out Susan just because she has full health. I go for Minimize because I know he's going to heal, and I just want to make it more likely that she survives. So we hit that Minimize and raise our evasiveness. I go for Shockwave because it's probably the best move I have. We hit a crit, which is really nice, but of course Susan gets poisoned by the first Sludge. I take a look at my other Pokemon, and I decide Susan is way more important than Elizabeth. So we send out Elizabeth, pretty much expecting her to die. She gets hit with a Smokescreen, which is really bad because Mega Punch is already so hard to hit. So that misses, and after that Sludge, I think for a minute about maybe not sacrificing Elizabeth, but she's pretty much the only one that we can sacrifice here. So we actually get hit with the Weezing Tackle, which I almost never see. But that gives us the clean switch into William. So we get over to William, we go for Psybeam. Luckily we're able to tank the Sludge, and when we hit that Psybeam, we take the Weezing out despite the difficulty in doing so, and we are able to receive the Soul Badge from Koga at a great price. Regardless of the tragedy required to do so, we beat Koga, and soldier on with the remaining members of our team, fighting our way through Silph Co on our way to our next encounter with Rocket Boss Giovanni. But first, we once again have to do battle with our rival Luke. This is a particularly difficult rival fight, so we have to be basically at our best, and we start with Susan because she's a really good special attacker. We go for the Shockwave. We actually get Cute Charm, which is just a nice bonus to the start of this fight, and we're able to hit the second Shockwave and take the Pidgeot out. He actually sends in the Gyarados next, which is really nice for us because we're able to go for the Shockwave again. It doesn't kill, given Susan is not an electric type or anything like that. She gets hit with a critical bite, and unfortunately the Gyarados gets the flinch, so even with the Cute Charm active, I'm a little worried here, and I decide to switch over to Jim just because of how much of a tank he is. So we tank that first Dragon Rage and go for a Strength, and we get the Strength and take the Gyarados out. So Luke sends out his Growlithe next, which does get the Intimidate off on us, but that's not too bad because we do have Surf on Jim. Unfortunately, this doesn't kill either. The Growlithe goes for takedown, we take a little bit more damage, and then it faints to its self-damage. He sends out the Alakazam next, and it hits a Calm Mind, which is horrifying. And we go for Strength. Unfortunately, with that Intimidate, the Strength doesn't kill. So Alakazam sets up a Future Sight, we're able to take it out with the next Strength. But now there's a really strong Calm-Minded Future Sight set up, and he goes into his Venusaur. So we switch over to Charles, but the Venusaur hits us with a Sleep Powder, and then hits us with Razor Leaf. Charles then takes the super strong Future Sight, continues to be asleep, gets hit with another Razor Leaf, doesn't wake up, So now he's at 10 PP, and we are forced to switch off of him and into Ashley. So we go into Ashley. She takes a really bad hit on Razor Leaf, and I realize her moveset kind of sucks. So we are already in a really bad position here, and we kind of have to think about what to do. So whether it's correct to sacrifice Ashley or try to switch to somebody else, we just decide to just go for whatever we have, and we hit a Payday. It really doesn't do anything. Venusaur does miss the Sleep Powder, which gives us another chance. I try Cut to see how much it does, but that doesn't do a lot either. Ashley gets put to sleep. He hits a Razor Leaf. I actually decide not to sacrifice Ashley. I switch over to Samantha just because she's really strong. I accidentally hit Pursuit, which is awful, awful, awful for the situation that we're in. So we are now asleep with Samantha. Venusaur hits another Razor Leaf, and things have suddenly gotten really bad for us. So we take a look. We switch over to Jim. We just want to tank hits. So he tanks a Razor Leaf, and we decide to go for a Yawn here to try and get Venusaur asleep. But of course, Venusaur is faster, and he gets us to sleep first. So we just try to get Jim awake here, but we can't do it. And now we are in an incredibly difficult position. So we send William out. He traces Venusaur's Overgrow. He gets hit with the Razor Leaf. And we decide to go for Side Beam since Venusaur is a poison type. And it does a lot of damage. So things are looking pretty good. We go for a Recover to just try and save ourselves, but it doesn't matter. Venusaur's Razor Leaf takes him out, and so we send out Susan. She doesn't really have anything to do, but she's not asleep. And that's really, she's kind of the only option we have. But I realize she's not going to kill, right? But we try anyway. We go for a Shockwave. It doesn't matter. Venusaur is incredibly fast and takes Susan out. So we switch over to Ashley. Ashley luckily does get the Wake Up and gets a Payday off. But Venusaur then takes her out. We switch over to Charles because we don't really have much of a choice. We get lucky again, and he wakes up and takes the Venusaur out, ending this absolutely abysmal rival fight. But at what cost? To be totally honest with you, it's kind of hard for me to imagine that rival fight going worse. Not only did we lose our strongest special attacker, Susan, but we also lost a versatile TM user with Ashley. But, as is always the case with Nuzlocks, you have to take the good with the bad, the clutch plays with the missed inputs, and so we move on, reworking our team as best we can. At the moment, we have 3 normal flying types, which isn't great for team composition, and we don't have a lot of available replacements for the team members we lost. With that in mind, we catch and trade a Golduck for Mark the Lickitung on Route 18, and also pick up Tim the Ditto on Route 15. Lickitung is an alright addition, being sort of a discount Snorlax, but the Ditto isn't much more than a fresh body. I also want to mention here that we could have picked up the Farfetch'd in Cerulean had we really wanted to, but the thought of another flying normal type didn't really cross our minds, and so we continued on without pursuing that option. With our team back up to 6, we enter Silph Co once more and face off against Giovanni. This is probably the most difficult Giovanni fight in the game, so we decide to start with Jim because he is absolutely our powerhouse at this point. He hits us with a Fury attack. I accidentally hit a Surf first, which isn't great, but we are able to take the Nidorino out with a Strength pretty soon afterwards, so it's not really a big deal. He sends in his Nidoqueen next, and though we do take a minute to think about switching, we decide to keep Snorlax in and go for a Surf. It doesn't do a ton, so we decide to try a Strength, but the Nidoqueen hits us with a Double Kick, which is scary because it does a lot of damage. But Strength does enough to make us feel comfortable going for it again, and we're able to take the Nidoqueen out, and we also get a level up on Jim. He sends in his Kangaskhan next, and we decide to switch over to Phil, mostly just to not risk Jim. The Kangaskhan hits us with a Tail Whip, and we go for a Feather Dance, because Feather Dance is going to lower its attack by 2 stages, and by doing this, we're going to give us the opportunity to set up a more interesting strategy that's going to help us get through this fight. So we hit the Kangaskhan with the Feather Dances, and we actually switch over to our Ditto, Tim. So we send our Ditto out. The Kangaskhan actually goes for Tail Whip, and we decide to transform, so we don't even take any damage to begin with, and we get our Ditto into the Kangaskhan form. So basically we are now evenly matched, and we decide to kind of trade blows with the Kangaskhan, testing out her moveset and seeing what she has. So we go for a little bit of Rage and allow the Rage to build up before realizing it's not the best option, and we decide to hit the Kangaskhan with some Tail Whips, because this is going to set the Kangaskhan up, make it a lot more defeatable, basically using its own moveset against it. So we hit it with those tail whips and then we go for Mega Punch. It does a really good amount of damage, so we decide to keep up with that. Luckily we hit that second Mega Punch. We get hit with one of our own, but on the third Mega Punch we're able to take the Kangaskhan out, and it makes us feel pretty good to have used a Ditto like that. So he sends out the Rhyhorn and we switch out to Mark. We tank a Fury attack, which is no big deal, and we go for a Surf, which takes out the Rhyhorn in one hit, and the crit was kind of just icing on the cake. And with that, we've defeated Giovanni. After picking up the Master Ball, there's not much else we can do but face off against Sabrina, and so we make our way next door to do so without altering the team. Sabrina can be a difficult fight, but luckily her team is full of glass cannons, so we start with one of our own and send out Samantha, who's quick enough to hit the Cadaver with a Tri-Attack and take it out in one hit. We go for Tri-Attack again, and we one-shot her Mr. Mime as well, at which point she sends out the Venomoth. We go for Fly here because Venomoth is going to be weak to flying type moves, avoiding a Supersonic, and taking the Venomoth out in one hit as well. Her last Pokemon is her Alakazam, which she sends out. We go for another Tri-Attack, and we take the Alakazam out in one hit too, ending a very easy Sabrina. We head down to Cinnabar Island next, and pick up a new Raticate, Rick, in the Cinnabar Mansion. We also collect the secret key necessary to enter Blaine's gym, and after buffing up some of our team members with Dig TMs, we plunge into the fire. Blaine usually isn't a trainer that we have to worry about all that much, so we start off with a familiar strategy, using Dig on our Raticate Rick. We avoid the first Fire Blast and then hit the Growlithe with Dig. It doesn't take it out, but luckily its next Fire Blast misses as well, and we are able to take it out with Strength. He sends out his Ponyta next, and we start with Dig again. We avoid that first Fire Blast, and we hit Dig. It does a little bit more than half, but we do have to tank a Fire Blast and then take the Ponyta out with Strength. Blaine sends in his Rapidash next, and we start with Dig again, avoiding that first Fire Blast, but we don't do that much damage, and then we have to take a lot of damage with that Fire Blast, so we decide to switch Rick out, go into our tank gym. The Rapidash misses the Fire Blast, and we go for Yawn, which is a bit of a strange play. I'm not sure why we did that, but then I go over for Surf because that's going to do super effective damage. And we did take a little bit more damage than I wanted to on Gym, which sets us up in kind of a bad position against the Arcanine, who hits us with a big Fire Blast, tanks the Surf, and at this point we have to make a decision on if we're going to try to keep Gym in or if we're going to switch him out. Because we want to protect him, we end up switching to Charles, the Fearow, and send him out. The Arcanine does hit Charles with a Fire Blast, which he tanks, and we go for Fly, mostly just to burn those Fire Blasts as much as we can. Unfortunately, Fly doesn't kill, and we do lose Charles to the Arcanine. So next we go to Samantha because she is our fastest Pokemon, and we go for a Drill Peck. Blaine heals up, we hit that Drill Peck, and it does a pretty good amount of damage. It does enough to make us feel confident doing another one, but then he survives it, and he takes Samantha out as well. So we go into Rick because he's pretty fast to go for a quick attack, not realizing that Blaine has another Hyper Potion. So now we're at a point where we're just doing Strength with Rick, and we're going to have to sacrifice him. So we lose him to the takedown, and we switch over to Mark. We go for Surf, the Arcanine uses Bite, and of course it gets the flinch, at which point we are able to use Surf and take Arcanine out and finish our Blaine fight. Sustaining these kinds of losses when we're already down so far on team members is a bitter pill to swallow. But with the knowledge that there are at least a few more encounters before the end of the game, we pick ourselves back up and face the grim future together. Our first backup encounter is on Route 18, where we accidentally break our own rules and catch Pat the Raticate, forgetting that Mark was also technically encountered on Route 18. Sorry. After Pat, we head back onto the cycling road and also add Sally the Doduo to our ranks. We have another 1 or 2 options in terms of team members here, including visiting the first of the Sevi Islands on Bill's side quest, but we decide to forego those for the moment and take on Giovanni, feeling that our current team should be sound enough to beat him. And so, after bringing our new team members up to speed and further shuffling our movesets, we head into the 8th gym for our final confrontation with Giovanni. For our final fight with Giovanni, we decided to lead with Gym and Surf, but we made a mistake and accidentally started with Phil, which means that we basically have to start with a switch out into Gym, tank a tank down from the Rhyhorn, and then take it out with Gym's Surf. Luckily, we're not punished too hard for our mistake, but you don't like to see that kind of opening. He sends out the Nidoqueen next, and we tank an Earthquake before hitting it with Surf, It does a good amount of damage, so we repeat that same action to take the Nidoqueen out. Giovanni then sends out his Nidoking, and we tank his Earthquake again and hit a Surf. It does a good amount of damage, but to save Jim, we decide to bait out the next Earthquake and switch over to Sally before going for a Drill Peck to take the Nidoking out for good. We get a critical hit just for flavor. He sends out his Rhyhorn next, and we switch out to Mark, our backup Surf user. We get hit with a Scary Face, but that doesn't really matter for Lickitung. We then tank an Earthquake and hit the Rhyhorn with a Surf and take it out, which means Giovanni only has his Dugtrio left. So we tank another Earthquake from the Dugtrio, hit a Surf with Mark, and take out Giovanni's last Pokemon, and end him and his criminal empire for good. With Giovanni defeated, we turn our gaze to the final challenges of the game, and head to the Sevi Islands to boost our numbers of encounters. Unfortunately, this takes a bit of extra time, but we're able to complete the side quest and pick up Melanie the Persian for our team, while also collecting some extra berries in the forest, so at the very least it was a fruitful use of our time. Heading back into Kanto proper, we make our final push toward the Elite Four. Luckily, our new level cap allows us to steamroll our final non-champion rival fight, but as we walk through the final series of gates leading to Victory Road and traverse the cave itself, we can't shake the feeling that, despite being as prepared as we can be, something terrifying awaits us. As much as we can, we prepare our plain Jane, utterly normal, surprisingly avian team for the toughest challenge they've faced yet, switching up movesets and fine-tuning our strategy for taking on this final challenge. After all said and done, here's the team we ended up with. Melanie the Persian, our all-arounder who has at least some form of answer to any challenge that may come her way. Mark the Lickitung, a latecomer who has nonetheless proven his worth time and again, who is also well known for his surfing abilities and karate talent. Phil the Pidgeot, an old veteran well-versed in all things flying. Jim, our heavyweight heavy hitter, who holds much of our hope in his chubby little paws. Pat the Raticate, a member of a long line of dependable and fiery scrappers, sure to carry us through some difficult interactions. And finally, Sally the Dodrio, a strong and fast glass cannon with a surprising level of versatility. This is our team, those who remain after so much tragedy. Without any other preparations to make, we enter the doors and begin our normal Elite Four challenge. For our first fight of the Elite Four, we start off with our Persian Melanie, because we've given her the Thunderbolt TM. So we blast the Thunderbolt. It does almost half, but obviously it's not enough to take her out on the next Thunderbolt, and we take an Ice Beam. I decided to go for Slash here, knowing that she's going to use the full restore, so we just want to get her out of a situation where the Thunderbolts don't kill. We then go for a Thunderbolt. Unfortunately, the Dugong sets up Hail, which is going to be annoying for the remainder of the fight, but we're able to then take the Dugong out with the Slash and move on to her Cloyster. So we run out Safeguard, and then we take some Hail damage. Of course, the Cloyster will usually protect on turn 1, but we have to go for the Thunderbolt anyway as we take that Hail damage. The next Thunderbolt takes the Cloyster out in one hit, and then she sends in her Slowbro. We get pelted by Hail, as does the Slowbro, and we decide to go for a Thunderbolt. It actually does a pretty good amount of damage, and because it goes for Yawn, it makes me confident to go for the next Thunderbolt and take the Slowbro out with a cheeky critical hit. Lorelei then sends in her most dangerous Pokemon, Lapras, and we immediately go to sleep. So we switch off of Melanie into Jim. For a moment, I think about going for Yawn, but I decided it's better to just get some damage and tank hits, and we go for Earthquake. The critical does more than half, but that makes me realize we're not going to be killing as easily as I'd like. We go for the Earthquakes anyway. I decided to go for another one here, luckily hit through the confusion, and take the Lapras out. So for her last Pokemon, she sends in Jinx. I get more scared than I need to, and switch over to Mark. Mark immediately gets hit with an Attract. We try to go for Strength anyway, and it doesn't work. We then take a lot of damage with Ice Punch, somehow get frozen, so Mark is just not having a great time in this fight, and we decide to switch over to Pat to try and finish things off. Pat takes an Ice Punch. It obviously does a lot of damage, but we go for a Strength anyway, hoping to kill in one. It doesn't do that, but as we miss the Lovely Kiss, I know that she's going to heal, so I'm able to just go for another Strength after the heal hits, and then go for another Strength to take the Jinx out and finish the Lorelei fight. Overall, our Lorelei encounter went pretty well, but we're not out of the woods yet, as Bruno waits in the next room. Now, Bruno, of course, ain't. But, given this is a normal type Monolocke, I think it's fair to say we're a little worried as we enter the next room. Kanto's preeminent fighting type trainer starts off with an Onix, so we send in Mark, as his Surf is going to be able to take out both of the Onixes in a single hit. So once we've done that, Bruno sends in his Hitmonchan, and I know that it's not a good idea to keep Mark in here, so in his place we decide to switch over to Phil, our Pidgeot. Phil tanks a Sky Uppercut, at which point I make the really bad decision to go for Fly, tanking another Sky Uppercut before hitting the Hitmonchan. It doesn't take it out. We get hit with a Rock Tomb, followed by a Speed Fall, so we're in a pretty bad position as we go for a Quick Attack and he goes for a full Restore. We hit the Quick Attack and I know we just have to go for it, so we go for a Fly and then lose Pidgeot to the Mach Punch. We switch into our backup Sally, go for a Drill Peck, and we're able to take the Hitmonchan out with that. After Hitmonchan is gone, Bruno sends in his Machamp, and we go for the same thing, hitting it with a Drill Peck. It actually survives with a single HP and hits us with a Scary Face, and then heals up with the Citrus Berry. The Cross Chop does a ton of damage, but we're then able to take it out with the crit Drill Peck. Once the Machamp is gone, Bruno sends in Hitmonlee. I'm scared for Sally here, and I know I want her later, so we actually decide to switch into Jim, hoping that he'll be able to tank some hits from the Hitmonlee. He hits a Mega Kick, which doesn't do too much, and we go for Psychic. The Brick Break that he hits us with next does a ton of damage, and then Psychic really doesn't do that much, so we know we gotta get Jim out of dodge, sending in Mark to take his place. Brick Break just crits and takes Mark out immediately, and so we decided to use that opportunity to get a clean switch on Sally, hit the Hitmonlee with a Drill Peck, and then take it out. So next is Bruno's Ace in the Hole, his second Onix. We decide to get Sally out of there, and in her place we switch over to Melanie. Melanie first tanks a crit Double Edge, which does a lot of damage. We go for Dig, and the Onix does go for Earthquake, which is really bad for us. We get a crit Dig, and then the Onix hits us with another Earthquake, and takes Melanie out, which is really not great for us to see. We have kind of a difficult decision to make here, and we decide to go into Pat. We just go for Dig anyway, and then the Onix somehow crits the Earthquake. So Onix, you know, I joked about him being the ace in the hole, but he kind of is here as we switch into Jim, tank the Earthquake, hit it with Surf, and then finally end this disastrous fight with Bruno. I don't think there's any real way to sugarcoat it. Bruno was kind of a little bit just marginally not there. With a combination of some bad plays and even more bad luck, we finished the first half of the Elite Four with only Jim, Sally, and our dreams remaining. Although our spirits are a little broken, we decide to forge on, teaching Jim Shadow Ball, giving them some berries, and hoping against hope that that will be enough to see us through Agatha and give us a shot at making it to the end of this journey. For our fight against Agatha, we decide to lead with Jim, because he has Shadow Ball and is going to tank hits a little bit better. So after it sets up its first double team, we hit with Shadow Ball, which unfortunately doesn't quite take it out, and while she heals, we go for Surf, just so that we can take the Gengar down into kill range on the next Shadow Ball. Unfortunately, we do get confused and hurt ourselves in confusion, and after avoiding the Toxic, we go for another one, hurt ourselves in confusion again, but after the Gengar's second double team, we're able to snap out and thankfully take it out with Shadow Ball. Agatha then goes into her Golbat, and we have to make a decision on exactly how we want to take this thing out. We decide to hit it with Shadow Ball, so we do that, hitting through the confusion and hitting our first Shadow Ball. After this, we just set up another one, and after tanking the Air Cutter from the Golbat, Jim hits through confusion and gets a really lucky crit Shadow Ball to take the Golbat out. Agatha then goes into her Arbok, who lowers our attack a little bit with Intimidate. We go for Earthquake, and after tanking a Sludge Bomb, we snap out of confusion and hit it with the first one. We set up the next one, tank another Sludge Bomb, and are then able to take the Arbok out with Earthquake. Agatha then goes into her second Gengar, and we hit it with Shadow Ball after missing the first Hypnosis. It heals up its health with a Citrus Berry, and then we do fall asleep, but our Chesto Berry wakes us up. We hit another Shadow Ball, which almost takes it out, and at this point, Agatha has no choice but to heal, and we're able to hit another Shadow Ball, lower its special defense, avoid the Hypnosis, and get another Shadow Ball to take the Gengar out. At this point, Agatha only has her Haunter left. We go for one Shadow Ball, but after falling asleep, we decide to switch over to Sally and finish the fight off that way. The Haunter uses Curse, lowering its HP, and then we hit a Drill Peck to take the Haunter out, and finish our fight with Agatha. Agatha was a little difficult, but we're able to make it through with no extra losses. This would usually be comforting, but in this situation, it only means we still have to face off against our two greatest challenges yet, Lance and our rival, Luke. Knowing we have few other options, I decide to pull out a strategy that's rightfully regarded as a classic amongst the Nuzlocke community. Double team and pray. Placing all of our hopes on Jim, we teach him double team and ice beam, and make our way into Lance's chamber. In order to take out Lance, we decide to start with Sally rather than Jim, because Jim doesn't really have a moveset that can handle the Gyarados. So first we set up an attract just to make it more likely that we can survive and take the Gyarados out, before starting to use Tri-Attack. Tri-Attack does a decent amount of damage, and after an immobilization turn, we hit our second Tri-Attack, tank a Dragon Rage, and then go for one more Tri-Attack, which unfortunately doesn't kill. We go for another Tri-Attack while Lance heals, and I'm honestly a little thankful he's using his full restores here. So we hit another Tri-Attack, and get one more for good measure. Gyarados hits us with a Dragon Rage, and we go for one more. It doesn't kill, but we get the freeze, but somehow the Gyarados breaks out immediately, and hits us with the Hyper Beam, killing Sally. During the recharge turn, we decide to set up a double team with Jim just to start getting his evasiveness up, before going for a Surf. Luckily the Gyarados misses the Hyper Beam, and we take it out with that Surf. And then Jim gets a level up to level 63. Lance then sends out the Aerodactyl, and he misses a wing attack, and we immediately go for Surf. It does a decent amount of damage, so we tank the next wing attack, go for one more Surf, which just barely misses killing. And I assume he might heal here and go for a double team, but he actually hits us with the Hyper Beam, and during the recharge turn, we decide to take the Aerodactyl out with Surf. Lance then goes into his Dragonite, and we go straight for Ice Beam, so after he sets up his first Safeguard, we hit that Ice Beam and do massive damage. The Dragonite heals up a bit with its Citrus Berry, but after tanking a wing attack, we take it out with Ice Beam. Lance then goes into his first Dragonair, and Jim heals up with the Citrus Berry before we just start sending Ice Beams as much as we can. So we hit that first Ice Beam, the Dragonair misses an Outrage, and then we take it out with our second Ice Beam. Lance then goes into his final Dragonair. He goes for Thunder Wave, which doesn't bother me too much as I hit the first Ice Beam. Safeguard drops, we go for one more Ice Beam, and we take the Dragonair out and finish our fight against Lance and Kanto's main Elite Four. Somehow, someway, Lance has been defeated, but we still have one more challenge if we want to beat this Monolocke. Luke. Given we only have one Pokemon, there isn't a lot of preparation we can do, and after healing and restoring Jim's PP, we head in to face our rival with the same moveset, Jim standing tall beside us, ready to give it his all while facing a nearly unbeatable challenge. We enter our rival's chamber and start the fight. As we have no other choice, we send Jim out to face off against the rival's entire team. We go for double teams. The Pidgeot immediately hits Feather Dance, which is really bad because it lowers our attack. He also hits us with Aerial Ace, which will hit through the double teams as we hit our second double team. He misses the Sand Attack, and we get our third double team set up. We set up our fourth one. The Pidgeot then hits us with another Aerial Ace, which is okay because we can tank it a bit, and we decide to go for Ice Beam here to take its health down because we can't risk getting hit with too many Aerial Aces. So we finally take the Pidgeot out, and then the rival sends in his next Pokemon, Alakazam. He misses his first Psychic, and we go for Earthquake, which is a critical hit and is enough to take the Alakazam out. He sends out his Rhydon next, and we go for Surf. And that's plenty to take out the Rhydon in one hit. Jim then gains a much needed level that will hopefully help him survive the rest of this fight. Gyarados comes out and lowers our attack even further, at which point we go for Ice Beam. Unfortunately, we don't have any better move than this, but honestly, with how much our attack has been dropped, this might be our best option either way. So the Gyarados continues to miss his moves as we hit Ice Beams. We actually get the freeze on Gyarados, which is nice to see. And we use this chance to get our last double teams. The Gyarados then defrosts, misses a Thrash, and we get our last double team. So all we have now is to finish it off with Ice Beams. Unfortunately, the rival is able to heal, which means we probably aren't going to have enough Ice Beams to take it out, and we're going to have to start using Surf. So we're in a pretty bad position here against the Gyarados, and although it keeps missing its moves, we have no real effective way of dealing damage outside of just going for Surf over and over. So we're doing our best here. The Gyarados hits another Dragon Rage. We get a critical Surf, which is really nice to see, but of course the rival has more than one full restore, and at this point things are looking pretty grim. All we could do is hope for the Hail Mary freeze there, which we didn't get, And even if we're able to kill the Gyarados, we're not going to have enough PP to finish this off, so it's just a matter of time. So we go for that last surf, and then the Gyarados hits its final thrash. Speaking totally honestly, this is a pretty disappointing result. We had a few misplays throughout the run that led to us facing the Elite Four with a slightly underpowered team, and that, combined with bad luck and some iffy decision making in the moment, made this a hard one to beat. A lot of times, I think a situation like this is one where it's good to take a step back, try another run, maybe work on some different challenges and cool off from the frustration that comes from losing a hard-fought battle. It's the right thing to do for your mental health. It's the responsible decision. It's smart, even admirable, which is exactly why, faced with this crossroads, I've decided to have Mike go to bed and rest up while I do a marathon run back of the same exact Nuzlocke so that we can actually beat it for this video. I load up another save file and name myself Tony because I'm an Avenger, and I'm not going to let this run beat me down. I'm not going to let it win. That's what I'm here to do. Let's cue the montage. In a display of grit, determination, and masochism, I find myself at the Indigo Plateau, ready to try my hand against the Elite Four one more time. Mike and Eric both rejoin me at this point as a way of moral support, along with my new team of crack specialists, who I'm hoping will carry us to victory. This time around, the team consists of Liam the Clefable, an all-around special attacker, Ian the Raticate, and Helena the Persian, both to run backup and fill in any gaps in the team. Brooke the Dodrio, to deal with Bruno. Olive the Kangaskhan, as an additional powerhouse with near limitless potential. And finally, James, second of his name, here to avenge his father and lead our team to victory. I'm feeling slightly better about this team than the last one, mostly thanks to the addition of Olive, but at its core the strategy has remained the same. Bracing ourselves for turmoil, we head through the gates once again, and open the curtains on round 2. For this run against Lorelei, we start off with our Clefable, Liam, and we go for Shockwaves. The Dugong is actually faster and it hits a Surf, but we hit our first Shockwave. We go for another one. Ice Beam doesn't do too much damage, and the next Shockwave gets it really close to fainting, but of course it doesn't, so Lorelei goes for the full restore. We then re-roll our Shockwaves, hit the first one. Dugong sets up Hail, and on the second Shockwave, we get a nice critical hit to finish off the Dugong. Lorelei then goes into the Cloyster, as always. Hail continues to fall, we get pelted. We go for Shockwave. The Cloyster interestingly sets up spikes, and surprisingly Liam doesn't take the Cloyster out this turn, which is not great for us. It then protects on our next Shockwave, kind of letting us eat that Hail damage. It gets the second Protect in a row, which is really frustrating because we're taking so much chip damage here, and then it goes for Dive. So the Hail stops, and at this point I know that we're going to have to switch out. We go into James because he's going to be able to take the spikes and the dive better than the other members of our team. And then we go for Brick Break. The Cloyster goes for dive again, so we just have to re-roll the Brick Break, and we take the Cloyster out. Lorelei then sends in her Slowbro, and we go for Headbutt rather than Brick Break just to make sure that we're getting stab damage. We actually get the flinch, which is really nice here. After taking that Surf, we go for the third Headbutt and take the Slowbro out without any issues. Next, Lorelei goes into her Lapras, and we return to Brick Break for the super effective damage. It does a really nice amount of damage here, but with the Citrus Berry, we know it's not going to kill on the next hit. So we go for another Brick Break. I know that Lorelei's going to heal here, so we have time to go for another Brick Break and get the health back down to about half, which we do. And then we decide to make a risky play. Luckily, she doesn't get the crit body slam, and we're able to take the Lapras out with that final Brick Break. So she goes into her Jinx, and it's finally time for us to switch out. So we switch over to Olive. She's hurt by the spikes, but it doesn't matter too much, and then she's able to tank that Ice Punch, and we go for Strength. So it does a good amount of damage, but then we do get put to sleep, so we have to look at our team and see who it's worth sending out. We think about it for a minute, and then we decide to go with Olive instead because she has early bird, so she wakes up really quickly, and we take the Jinx out with Strength. The Lorelei fight was a little dicey, but we make it through with no losses. After finally using some of our saved up TMs, we're ready for Bruno. Given the disastrous result of our last fight with Bruno, we approach this attempt with a slightly different strategy, deciding to lead with Steel Wing on Brook so that we can hopefully handle his entire team without risking anyone else. But even with this new strategy, I'm a little nervous as we start the fight. As Bruno preps to send out his Onyx, we send out Brook to confront it, going for our Steel Wing strategy. It does a pretty good amount of damage, and she's able to tank that Rock Tomb, but unfortunately we get the Speed Fall before taking the Onyx out with the second Steel Wing. Bruno then goes into his Hitmonchan, and we switch over to Drill Peck. We tank a pretty meaty Sky Uppercut before taking the Hitmonchan out with that single Drill Peck, at which point Bruno switches into his Machamp. We go for Drill Peck again, luckily outspeeding the Machamp and taking it out in one hit, which is a really big moment for us in this Bruno fight. He then goes into the Hitmonlee, and we unfortunately lose Brook to a really quick Mega Kick, at which point we switch over to Olive with Aerial Ace. We get a great hit on the Hitmonlee, tank a Brick Break, and then finish off the Hitmonlee with that final Aerial Ace. Bruno then has nothing left but his final Onyx, so we switch out of Olive and go over to James. The Onyx then hits Earthquake, which really doesn't do a lot of damage, and we tank another one before going for Surf, taking the Onyx out and finishing our fight with Bruno with few issues. Realistically, I think that Bruno fight went about as well as it could have, given his increased danger level in a normal Monolocke. I don't feel great about losing Brook, given the Dodrio is pretty good against Agatha, but we're looking much stronger than we were after our last encounter. In preparation for Agatha, we heal up and give our precious Shadow Ball TM to Ian. This is a Phenomenal classic, as Raticate's fast speed and relatively high physical attack give it a good shot at taking out Agatha's Gengar before they can set up Double Team. I also decided to drop a Fire Blast TM on Liam, because why not, and we equip some key members of the team with Chesto Berries to prevent sleep. And with that, we head in to face Agatha. So for this fight with Agatha, she sends out the Gengar and we send out Ian to face it. We start off with the Shadow Ball, which does a really good amount of damage but doesn't quite kill. The Gengar sets up a Double Team and Agatha goes for the full restore, at which point we thankfully hit the first Shadow Ball and then hit the second Shadow Ball to take it out. Agatha then switches into her Golbat, which is a little bit difficult for us to deal with. We go for Strength first, hit a critical hit which gets insanely close to taking the Golbat out, but doesn't quite do it. Then thinking that she's going to heal, we go for an unnecessarily risky Thunder that actually takes it out, at which point she brings out the Arbok. We get hit with Intimidate, but go for Dig anyway, avoiding the first Sludge Bomb. Dig does not do a lot of damage. The Arbok then hits a Sludge Bomb that very nearly kills us. Luckily we had the Pecha Berry on to help Ian avoid meeting the same fate as his predecessors, Delia and Marcus. We then switch into James, tank the first Sludge Bomb, and go for a Headbutt on the Arbok. The second Sludge Bomb does a good amount of damage. The third one does even more, so we're able to take the Arbok out, but James is in a pretty iffy position right now, as Agatha brings out her next Gengar. So we have to switch out. We decide to go into Helena, because her moveset is going to at least be able to do some damage to the Gengar. It misses its first Hypnosis, and we go for Bite. It does an okay amount of damage, but unfortunately we get hit with the next Hypnosis, and we decide to try to hit through it and just see if we can get Helena to wake up and do more damage to the Gengar, which it finally does. But she's taken a lot of damage, and unfortunately we have to sacrifice Helena here to get the clean switch into Olive. So the Gengar heals up a little bit, and we go for Aerial Ace. Luckily Olive's early bird comes in clutch and lets us wake up immediately, and then Agatha full restores. So at this point we just start hitting Aerial Aces as often as we can. Olive does get poisoned. She gets a big critical hit, which is really good, and then with this next Aerial Ace we're able to take the Gengar out. Unfortunately Olive has taken a lot of damage and she's poisoned, so we have to switch off of her, going over to Liam. Liam gets Mean Looked, so he's not able to escape, and then we get Hypnosis. Luckily we have the Chesto Berry for this exact situation, and we hit the Psychic to finish off the Haunter and our fight with Agatha. It wasn't perfect, but with how dangerous Agatha can sometimes be, We take our single loss as a positive and begin to prepare ourselves for Lance. Although it might make sense to place Ice Beam on Liam, given he's our highest special attacker, we decide to give it to James instead, mostly because we're hoping his extra bulk will give him more chances to actually use it. Finally, as we've decided to lead off with Ian for this fight, we use the Blizzard TM we picked up in Cinnabar now, on the off chance that it becomes necessary for Ian to face off against any of the actual dragons. As ready as we'll ever be, we take a step forward, and begin our battle against the Elite Force Dragon Tamer Lance. So for this Lance fight, we'll be starting off with Ian again, because he has Thunder and we're hoping to use that to take out the Gyarados. So we start off with a Thunder. Unfortunately it misses and we take a Dragon Rage before hitting with Thunder. It doesn't kill, and the Gyarados then hits us with a Hyper Beam that takes out Ian. So as our backup, we send out Liam and use a Shockwave just to finish off the Gyarados. After this, Lance switches over into his Aerodactyl and we keep Liam in, just going for the Shockwave. Unfortunately, we get hit with a critical Ancient Power. The Shockwave does a decent amount of damage, and the next Wing Attack isn't enough to take us out. Unfortunately, our Shockwave can't take the Aerodactyl out either. Lance full restores, so we go for another Shockwave, take about half of its health, but unfortunately the Aerodactyl does not go down to the next Shockwave, and it takes Liam out with that final Wing Attack. We switch over to James, and we go for a Surf to take out the Aerodactyl, tanking his Hyper Beam before we can do so. With the Aerodactyl gone, Lance now brings out his Dragonite. Unfortunately, I accidentally misinput a Surf, which could have disastrous consequences. The Dragonite misses a Hyper Beam, tanks our Ice Beam, its Citrus Berry restores, and then it hits that next Hyper Beam and takes James out. So with Olive as our last chance, we send her out and go for a Strength on the Dragonite. Luckily, he has to recharge, and we're able to take him out with the second Strength. Lance then sends out his first Dragonair, and we continue with the same strategy we used on the Dragonite. After it safeguards, we take out the first Dragonair with a Strength, and he sends out his final Pokemon, and we keep up the exact same strategy, doing a good amount of damage, and then tanking the Outrage, hitting through Paralysis, and taking out the Dragonair and finishing our fight with Lance. You know, with how often you can solve Lance just by letting Ice Beam go brrr, I was a little surprised at how this fight went. Lance is no joke, and his dragons have left us with nothing but Olive, who, while certainly strong, is going to have a hard time taking out our rival Steve's entire team. To be perfectly honest with you, at this point, I was almost positive we'd lost the run, and was already steeling myself for the next attempt. But then, something happened. I looked at Olive, stared into her deep red eyes, and I finally remembered exactly who I was working with. The Kangaskhan at my side was a hard-working, fiery, opinionated, caring, and dare I say sexy, single mother, who would do whatever it took to provide for her child. She stared back and nodded, and it was then that I remembered one more thing. Olive is an absolute gem of a woman, and our rival's team is made up entirely of men. We had only one choice, and with a solemn gravity, we did what we had to do, overriding Olive's original moveset and replacing it with one focusing on the moves Attract and Double Team. Sacrificing her pride, Olive allowed me to make her over into a total bombshell, with the perfect set of tools to wreak havoc on our rival's team. We only had one shot at this, but if anyone could do it, I knew it would be Olive. The scariest thing for me heading into this rival fight is the fact that his Pidgeot has both Aerial Ace and Sand Attack. So we set up an Attract immediately because it's going to be imperative that we get just as many immobilization turns as possible so that we can set up our double teams. So we set up our first double team, set up another one. The Pidgeot luckily misses that Sand Attack, which is going to be really good for us, and we get the third double team. The Pidgeot then uses Aerial Ace, which is okay, we can tank a few of those. We get the fourth double team. The Pidgeot then is immobilized, and we get our fifth double team. The Pidgeot is immobilized again, and we're able to get ourselves fully double teamed up with max evasiveness. So at this point, the only thing for us to do is hit as hard as possible and hope that we don't get hit because our enemy is so taken with our beauty that they find it impossible to do so. So we go for strengths on the Pidgeot. Steve uses his full restore, which I don't really mind so much here. And we go for another strength. The Pidgeot luckily is immobilized by Love on this last turn, and we're able to take it out with a critical hit strength. We gain a level as well, which is going to help us a lot in this fight. And then Steve goes into his Alakazam. We immediately have to set up Attract. Luckily, he doesn't hit that first Psychic. And then we go for Earthquake just because we want to conserve as much of Strength's PP as possible. And Earthquake is going to be enough to take the Alakazam out anyway. Steve then goes into his Executor, and we go for Attract. The Executor then uses Sleep Powder, which miraculously hits. I still can't believe that this happened. But luckily, he's immobilized by Love, and we just have to pray that Early Bird is going to wake us up. And it does, and we're able to hit a Strength. It does okay damage. The Executor sets up Light Screen, which doesn't really matter for us as we hit our next Strength. He is immobilized by Love. And then we go for Earthquake here to avoid the heal because we don't really want the Executor healing with how much it can damage us. And then we get a critical hit Strength to take it out. Steve then goes into his Rhydon. As always, we hit that Attract first. Luckily, the Rhydon is immobilized, the Light Screen wears off, and we go for an Earthquake. It does nearly half. The Rhydon is immobilized again, and we go for another Earthquake. It doesn't quite kill. And at this point, the Rhydon misses its Earthquake. The rival goes for the full Restore, which I don't particularly mind it on the Rhydon either, because we can easily take it out with Earthquakes. So we go for 2 more Earthquakes. He's in the red. The Rhydon uses an Earthquake and misses, and the champion goes for another full Restore, which is annoying just for how long it's going to take us to take this Rhydon out again, and how many chances it has to hit us. Luckily, it doesn't get any of those chances, and we're able to finally take the Rhydon out with that final Earthquake. From here, the rival sends in his Arcanine. We tank the Intimidate, which is going to be a little bit important for us to keep in mind because it's going to make killing a little bit harder. The Arcanine is immobilized as we go for an Earthquake. It does about 1/3 of his health, which is not bad. He misses the Flamethrower. We hit the next Earthquake. The Arcanine is then immobilized by Love, and we take it out with that 3rd Earthquake. So, Steve only has 1 more Pokemon left. We gain 1 more level, which is actually just enough to match his Ace's level. We then hit Blastoise with Attract. Blastoise is then too infatuated with us to move forward, and we hit him with Strength. Blastoise is immobilized once again, and we continue up with the Strength, just hoping that we can just beat him down as much as possible. He then hits a Rain Dance, which is inconsequential. We hit another Strength. The Blastoise misses his Hydro Pump, thankfully. And then he heals up with the Citrus Berry. We go for another Strength. Blastoise is so in love with us, he just cannot figure out what to do. And we get 1 more turn of immobilization as the rain falls. And the champion full restores again. So, we're back on the grind. We go for Strength again. I apologize for how boring this is, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do. The Hydro Pump misses again, and we are now out of Strength turns, so we're forced to go with Earthquake and just do our best. So we hit another Earthquake. Blastoise makes it rain again. We go for another Earthquake. And we're on our final turn here as Blastoise looks at us and realizes he's okay with us taking him out. And we do it. We do it. And there you have it, everyone. Our degenerate strategy paid off. And though it wasn't the most respectable victory, some tough choices and good luck allowed Olive and her kid to enter the Hall of Fame and bring this normal-type Monolocke to a close. Say what you will about her methods, but I think this proves that no one should underestimate a mother who knows what she's working with. But with all that said, I really hope you enjoyed this hardcore normal Monolocke of Fire Red and Leaf Green. This one was pretty fun for me to run through, but it certainly wasn't easy. So I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a like. You know, assuming you did like it. This is the first hardcore Monolocke of Fire Red and Leaf Green that Mike and I have done on the channel, so please let us know what you thought. We'll definitely be coming out with more of these challenges in the future, so if you want to keep up to date on those and everything else we do, be sure to subscribe. And that's it. I hope you all have a great day, and as always, stay phenomenal.